Hey, it's Adam from Impact Gamers. We had a question a few days ago about how do you attach something to the player. So I'm going to take you through several different steps. It's quite easy, but this is from our counters and strings video that we did, where we attached a torch to the player so that when the player changed direction, the torch followed them, and we were looking at flags, turning things on and off. So we'll go through that. If you start a new application in the free or full version and shove in your active object to be your player, first of all, I'm going to look at this from a retro style movement. So we're going to look at directions rather than angles. Directions are shown down here, and I'm just going to draw an arrow on my character to show it's pointing to the right. I'm also going to place a holder that we're going to use later, not a holder, but just a bump of reference of where their hand is going to be for holding a torch. So you can see that I've got 4 directions, of which only to the right is filled in. I'm just going to set it to, the full 32, even though I'm not going to use all of them immediately. And so you've got 0, 8, 16 here, and 24 is 24 is there, and then 32 is there. And so it's 32 and 0 are the same. But anyway, I'm going to right click on here and create rotated directions. And then you can see as the angle changes, the arrow changes direction. And we have 2 different ways of referencing the object, 2 different positions. We have a hotspot. By default, this is in the center. If it's not in the center, the rotation is going to be slightly off. So I'm just going to press the C to force it to the center. And we have this, and that's the measurement for all the coordinates. When we position the object, it's done off the hotspot. But then we have the action point. Now this is a reference for when something is created to be launched from an object, or when we create it, we can choose the action point, a separate point. Now, these 2, in the free version, this is represented with an I as to see, and then the other one is represented as a target, a square target here. And you can have a look that they're still represented as a circle target and a square target. Now, the action point is what I'm going to use for my torch location, because I'm going to have it held in the player's hand. So I'm going to pop that there. Now, if I change my directions, they're different animations, and so they have different references. So you can see that the action point is now back in the center. So I'm just going to right click and create rotated directions again. Like I say, this is very specific for holding a torch. Normally, you might base everything off the center of an object. But you can see now the center remains the same, and then this positioning of the hotspot, the action point remains the same, the hotspot being the center. Okay, let's give it a movement type, and we will say 8 directions to start off with. Fine. Right, let's label it so that things become easy, and I will now create 2 different things. I'm going to create, first of all, to make things nice and simple, I'm going to create a shield, because the shield would be based around the center of the player. So you can just have a blue shield, and the hotspot I'm going to put in the center. Fine. I'm using a circle because I don't need to bother with different directions, because a circle is always a circle. Whereas I need the reference with my character so that I can show you what's happening. But this circle with shield, okay. Now, what we'll do is we'll make a little pickup in the game. And like I say, I won't really bother with the artwork too much, but just to represent it, let's say it's a square there. Fine. So now what I'll do is this shield, I'm going to change on the display options, not the display options, even the runtime options. So this one here, I'm going to say don't include a build time. So it won't exist in the game. If I run the game now, you can see it's not there. And so I can move around the screen. And you can see my direction change going left and right and up and down. But, right. Oh, wait a minute. So I run my game. you can see it's not actually created, and you can see my player, the direction changes as I change direction, left and right, up and down, and then the diagonals as well. So we'll make it that when we hit the shield pickup, the shield becomes attached, created and attached to us. So in the event editor, just a simple new condition, the player collision with another object with the shield pickup. Let's destroy the shield pickup. Let's create an object, and create a shield. Fine. Where should we create it? Well, let's create it at 0, 0 to our hotspots. We could change it to the action point, but we'll leave it as the hotspot, which is default for relative 2, and you can see it's in the center there. So when we touch it, that shield appears, and then it doesn't do anything else after that. So this is about attaching it. And so for a shield in the center, dead simple, new condition, we'll special always, so the cogs and always, and then on the shield itself, we're going to right click for a tick underneath shield, position, select position. And then this allows us to choose any coordinate on screen, but we don't want to, we want to reference relative to so that it follows the player. So it's just to attach something, always position and set it. So if we run our application now, we now have this big blue thing over us. Doesn't look great. So I'm just going to show you a tip for that for shield. I could arrange and send it to back in the level frame editor, but I think it's far better that if it's on top, that if we choose its display options, we can choose a blend coefficient between 0 being fully solid or 255 fully invisible. So I'll go for 200, and then we can run application. And then we've got this faint shield over the top of us. Now, the way that a shield would work is that if we had a bad item in the game, so if I just shove something in, and we'll call it bad, and just to help us out, let's make it red. We often use colors to represent things while we're building the game. We could have a new condition that if the player hits into the bad, then the player gets destroyed. But I'm just drag that down to copy it. If the shield, just double click to change it, hits the bad, then we will destroy the bad. So if the shield hits the bad first, the bad gets destroyed. So if we run the application now, we can get the shield, we can go into the bad and we're fine. But if we don't get the shield, we're dead. Also, if you wanted to time out on the shield, I would just probably use its ultra values, which we covered when we talked about counters and strings in our video manual. I would give it a new ultra value and I would call it lifespan. And I would set it to something like, I don't know, I would set it to 50 and then just have a new condition, the timer. And we cover this on the strings and counters. But I would say every 10th of a second, I would, on the shield, I would ultra values subtract from the lifespan 1. And then just quite simply, if the shield compared to one of the ultra values, if the lifespan is lower or equal to 1, and I say lower or equal just in case it gets to -1 due to any kind of issues with the coding later on, that it will still get destroyed. That way, I can now quite happily pick up a shield. Within 5 seconds later, it will be destroyed. So there we go. But it allows me to have more shield drops around the level. And it allows me to have multiple shieldings. So I could get one shield and get another. You can see it getting darker and darker. Kind of a waste of time getting multiple shields. And you can see it dropping back to nothing there. But it allows you to do that. That's because a new shield's created each time. So let's look at the torch. So I'm going to create the torch beam and I'm going to show this basically, and then I'm just going to show a bit more advanced. Now, this is the trick that I used to make the torch beam be attached off center. I have the torch beam here. I put the hotspot at where the torch is shining out, or the flashlight, as Americans, you might call it. I create all of the directions, so create rotated directions. Now, this is the dead simple bit. I'm going to have the beam always on, just because the tutorial before shows you how to toggle things, but we'll have it always on. We'll use the same always because we might as well. We're going to position, select position on our player, but options this time on the action point. Now, if you notice, we've got 0, 0. And if you notice that the action point isn't actually moved to the action point, don't worry about that. You can see here that it tells you it's going to be on the action point. So I'll show you that first. It's not complete, but it does mean that when I go forwards to the right, it's fine. But we've got this issue that it's always shining to the right. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set its direction. So right click, direction, select direction for the beam. Now, we don't know which direction the player is facing ourselves, but we can use a calculation. We can calculate the direction. And the direction is quite simply is going to be whatever the player's animation current direction value. So it's a Dura P1 for me. For direction, now if I run my application, I'm attached to the hotspot, whichever direction I face. Now I've got 8 directions, but even if I ramp it up by using a different control like race car maybe, which uses all 32, there we go, as I turn around, it does that. And then we can have things attached to us. Now, the beam of light always being attached to us is fine, but we're using directions at the moment. So what happens if we want to make it so that we can face a direction but travel in a different direction? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back to 8 directions, and we're going to use angles. Now, angles, object can be an angle between 0 and 360 or 0 and 359 degrees. And travel in a different direction. And that happens with physics things. You might have an object thrown to the left while it's facing to the right, and so we're going to look at angles now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove in on screen a target, because Clickteam isn't great at using the mouse pointer as an object. So I'm going to create my own target. So I'm just going to, oh, it's beautiful. There we go. And shove it in there. I shove the hotspot. That's the hotspot I'm putting in the center. I'm now going to say, I'm going to label it because I'm sensible. Or aim. Aim is a better thing to say. On the aim, I'm going to get this to position on the X coordinate of the cursor, the mouse pointer, current X position of mouse. And then for the Y position, I'm going to set the Y coordinate of that aim to be the Y position of the mouse. So now if I run my application, you can see I can move around screen. Great. And I can walk around screen. I'm also going to set it that always the player, their angle looks at me. So always I'm going to go to alt value, not alt values. I'm not going to go to always direction. I'm not, sorry. I'm going to do the angle. Sorry, ignore that. These are the quick tutorials. So I'm going to go scale angle. I'm going to set the angle of the player. And now the angle of the player is going to be whatever the player's position is facing an angle of a vector. So that means look towards a point, and the point is going to be the X position of here and the Y position of here. Now I could have used the cursor, but because it's not an actual object, it does mean that it's harder for things to target if they're not doing these equations. But anyway, I'm saying, so I follow the X aim and the Y aim of the target. I could have used the X and Y mouse. I could have, but I would have run into problems later. I'll go with maximum quality because there's not much image to change. That just means that it anti-aliases. So now you can see I've got this odd situation of facing the wrong way for the angle. That is just quite simply because I'm now saying that my angle is changed and I've got all of these directions here, it's changing my direction, then changing the angle. So what I'm going to do is just agree each time to reduce down to here. Now, if you're using physics movement, this doesn't really matter. The angle is adjusted automatically. Now, if I run my application, I'll see it's now facing my mouse because whichever direction I go is now facing my mouse, because the angle is overtaking the directions. I hope that's clear. It's not trying to change direction and angle at the same time. So the final thing is that this whole torch, rather than set the direction, the only difference is I'm going to set its angle. So scale angle, I'm going to set its angle to be whatever the player's angle is. Get angle. So, and we'll do that at highest quality. So now, you know, I'm shining my torch around and I can move different directions. So this is, you know, if it was a gun and you're targeting. Also, the cursor's looking a bit ugly there. I'm just going to say at the start of the frame, under the cursor, we will hide it. And then we don't have to worry about it. So there we go. So now I've got my target. I can now get my shields and walk around. Just as a bonus, let's see how we can make the torch actually light things up. We can use layers, and what we can do is we can shove the torch onto a layer so it's above. Now I'm going to change this torch so that it's actually a black object, and also in terms of angles, I don't need any of these because I am not changing its direction at any point. I don't need any of these. If you're not using retro style movement, if you're using angles, let's do the same. Let's just remove it so that it's just facing to the right. There we go. I'm also going to add a quick backdrop here and here. And this backdrop is on layer 2. You can see it's on layer 2, and you can see here it's on layer 2. It's got a little 2 there. I'm going to change this to be white. So let's just go into the color, white. Right. Now this is the bit where it's going to make a difference, because we're going to go into the layer properties. So just selecting the layer, we've got, well, we can call this the beam layer. We're going to change its effect. So currently it's got no effect, like as in it just will be white and black on top of our game and we can't really see what's happening. But if we change the layer effect to be subtract, it means that anything that's white will be darkened and anything that's black will be left alone. So if we do that, you can now see that the white beam is visible. Also, the fact is we can't really see the player, which, you know, with a torch game, you might want to see the player. So I've got a couple of choices. I could change the blend coefficient. Do you remember for the shield, I said it was 255 for invisible and 0 for not visible. So I could change this so it just makes it murky. So rather than being a solid black, I can make it like a dark grey. So I could choose something like 100. And there we go. Now if I run my frame, you see the torch is actually more like a torch at this point. If you wanted, you could draw a white silhouette, a black silhouette, sorry, of the player in order for the subtract. But yeah, this allows you to do stuff like that. And then maybe if the lights come on in the game, you could change the blend coefficient up in the, I think in the full version, you can do that with the layers object. So new condition, keyboard, upon pressing a key, let's press L for lights. And then we can layers by name. And, oh, we could turn the effect off. Oh, visibility, there we go. We could hide. And the name of the layer was beam. So there we go. So if we run our application, I can go around and then press L and the lights come on. So there we go. A little bit extra if you're actually adding a torch to your game. If that doesn't help, I can record an extra bit of a video. Let me know in the comments, or if you have any problems and want to deal with something else. Okay, enjoy.